I'm the only one who can stop this war in 24 hours. Donald Trump has repeated this phrase at nearly every rally since 2023. For some, it's pure populism. For others, a real promise of peace. But what lies behind these words? And if Trump returns to the White House, will he actually help Ukraine or sacrifice it for his own agenda? To understand whether Trump will help Ukraine, we must ask, did he ever help it before? The answer is complicated. In 2019, Trump was accused of pressuring President Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden's son, Hunter, in exchange for military aid. The U.S. withheld $391 million in military assistance, leading to Trump's first impeachment. This event revealed a pattern. Trump sees Ukraine not as a partner, but a bargaining chip, a tool for his personal or political gain. Trump repeatedly criticized U.S. spending on European defense. He accused NATO of freeloading and openly threatened to cut off funding unless allies paid more. He made it clear, America first means global issues come second, unless there's something in it for the U.S. The MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, is built on three pillars: avoiding foreign wars, restructuring NATO, focusing inward, borders, jobs, economy. So where does Ukraine fit in? On one hand, supporting Ukraine weakens Russia without risking American lives. It boosts U.S. defense industry through weapons contracts. Defending democracy strengthens American global leadership. On the other hand, many MAGA voters see the war as someone else's problem. Billions in aid seem wasteful during U.S. domestic crises. Trump dislikes endless conflicts. He prefers the art of the deal. That's the tension, strategy versus rhetoric. Trump may want the war to end fast, but on whose terms? Recently, Trump has increased his comments about Ukraine, and they carry mixed signals. Quote, August 2024, "If I were president, this war wouldn't have happened. Putin respected me. Ukraine would be fine." Quote, May 2025, "I'll bring Russia and Ukraine to the table. They'll sit because they'll know the weapons won't keep coming." Quote, July 2025, "I'm open to supporting shipments if Europe doubles its share and stops taking advantage of us." Takeaways. Trump is not against aid, but wants it to be a deal. He sees the conflict as leverage for negotiation. He's ready to use military aid as a bargaining chip against both Kyiv and Moscow. In D.C., opinions on Trump and Ukraine are split. Democrats fear Trump will abandon Ukraine for a quick peace point to his friendliness with Putin and hostility to NATO. See him as a threat to global security alliances. Traditional Republicans are cautious but believe Trump won't sell out Ukraine. Expect him to negotiate, but keep a basic balance. Hope for a resolution that doesn't expand the war. MAGA Republicans want to cut Ukraine aid entirely, believe America must fix its own problems first. Support Trump as a deal maker, not a wartime president. Trump is unpredictable. His Ukraine policy is not ideological, it's transactional. He thinks in terms of leverage, deals, and benefits. This means he may freeze aid to force peace. He could pressure Europe to take on more of the burden. He might impose a peace deal on Ukraine that favors Russian interests, but that doesn't make him anti-Ukraine. It makes him anti-anything that doesn't serve American interests. In Moscow, Trump is not just seen as a former U.S. president, he's perceived as a strategic wildcard. Kremlin media narratives. Since 2023, Russian state media has pushed the idea that Trump's return will end U.S. support for Ukraine. Some examples. Trump is a realist. He knows Ukraine is a lost cause. With Biden, the war will last forever. Trump will bring peace. Trump doesn't care about Kyiv. That's good for us. This messaging isn't random. It's designed to lower Ukrainian morale and fuel division in the West. But behind the propaganda, Russian analysts are divided. Russian strategic view, optimists in Moscow believe Trump will push Ukraine into a territorial compromise. Sanctions on Russia might be softened. NATO unity could be weakened or fractured. Skeptics warn Trump is unpredictable. He could demand concessions from Russia too. His focus on winning deals may humiliate Moscow publicly. A U.S. withdrawal might force Europe to increase military support. In other words, Trump is not pro-Russia, he's pro-Trump, and that could go either way. In public, Ukrainian officials try to stay diplomatic, but behind the scenes, Kiev is already preparing for a worst-case Trump scenario. Key concerns in Kiev: freezing of U.S. military aid, pressure to accept unfavorable peace terms, losing the U.S. diplomatic umbrella in global forums. Ukrainian leaders remember 2019. They know Trump is capable of using Ukraine for leverage, especially if it helps him politically. Europe has seen this movie before, and it's preparing for the sequel. During Trump's first term, he called NATO obsolete, criticized Germany over defense spending, and threatened to withdraw U.S. troops from Europe. Now, European leaders are taking no chances. Germany, dramatically increasing defense spending, building up its arms manufacturing capacity, spearheading EU-wide initiatives to independently support Ukraine-Poland, pushing for a more aggressive stance against Russia, hosting NATO troops and expanding missile defense systems, preparing to lead regional coalitions, even without full U.S. support. France, advocating for a European army, increasing diplomatic outreach to Global South countries, urging strategic autonomy from Washington EU institutions, creating long-term aid plans for Ukraine that don't depend on the U.S., exploring joint weapons procurement and training programs, preparing legal tools to keep sanctions in place, even if the U.S. backs off. If Trump becomes president again, he will likely try to reshape the war effort using several tools. 1. Freeze or delay aid. He can use executive power to delay weapons shipments, block new military aid packages, push Congress for conditional support. Even without outright cuts, these moves create uncertainty and undermine morale. 2. Shift burden to Europe. Trump may demand that NATO members double their contributions. The EU take full responsibility for Ukraine's economy. U.S. weapons come with strings attached. This could lead to delays, logistical confusion, and conflict among allies. 3. Forced negotiations. Trump might propose a grand deal, ceasefire in exchange for territorial concessions, sanctions relief for Russia, peace summit with him as a deal maker. But such a deal might be unacceptable to Ukraine, unstable in the long term, a propaganda win for Moscow. Trump's potential return in 2025 has created global uncertainty. To some, he's a disruptor who can end the war. To others, a wild card who might cause chaos. Ukraine is racing to diversify its allies, build resilience, and prepare for tough negotiations. Europe is strengthening its defenses and financial commitment. Even Russia, while hopeful, is unsure of what Trump might do. One thing is clear: if Trump becomes president, the war in Ukraine won't end overnight, but the rules of the game could change fast. Perhaps the biggest fear in Brussels and Kyiv is this: Trump could leave NATO, or at least cripple it. What he said, NATO, is obsolete. We're paying for their defense and they're laughing at us. If they don't pay, why should we protect them? In early 2024, Trump even suggested he might not defend NATO countries if they didn't meet defense spending targets. This is more than rhetoric. Trump reportedly explored ways to withdraw from NATO in 2018 and could do it again. Legal and political barriers. A full withdrawal would require congressional approval, but Trump could still undermine NATO by refusing to attend key meetings, halting joint exercises, threatening to pull U.S. troops from Europe, blocking expansion or aid votes. What that means for Ukraine: a weakened NATO emboldens Russia. U.S. absence would force Europe to act independently. Kyiv could be left without a clear security umbrella. The entire European security architecture could begin to unravel. Trump constantly says, "I will end the war in 24 hours." But what would that look like? The peace deal he might push: immediate ceasefire. Ukraine must halt all offensives. Russia keeps control of occupied territories. Ukraine agrees to never join NATO. Sanctions on Russia gradually lifted. U.S. stops sending weapons in exchange for peace problems with that plan. Russia gets rewarded for invading Ukraine's sovereignty is compromised. No guarantee that Russia won't attack again later. Sets a precedent. Autocrats can use force to get what they want. Such a deal would be politically toxic in Kyiv and strategically disastrous for the West. A Korean solution for Ukraine? Some analysts believe Trump might push for a Korean-style outcome, a frozen conflict. Two Ukraines, one free, one occupied. A DMZ instead of a peace treaty. Why Trump might like it? He can say the fighting stopped. He avoids getting dragged into World War III. No more aid packages needed. He gets credit for peace through strength. But this would leave millions of Ukrainians under occupation, a permanent geopolitical flashpoint in Europe, a frozen war and ready to explode later. It would also signal to China, Iran, and North Korea, aggression works. Democracy is negotiable. Could Trump actually help Ukraine? Surprisingly, yes, under very specific conditions. Here's how Trump could truly help Ukraine. Checkmark 1. Pressure Europe to step up. If Trump forces Germany, France, and others to take full responsibility, it could make European support more reliable, create long-term defense plans not tied to U.S. politics, lead to stronger EU-Ukrainian ties. 2. Push for faster peace without capitulation. If Trump uses his deal-making image to force Russia, not Ukraine, to make real concessions, offer security guarantees to Ukraine, keep sanctions in place until Russia backs off, then he might succeed where others have failed. 3. Rebuild U.S. military deterrence. If Trump expands U.S. defense power and confronts China, it could deter future wars, help Ukraine by restoring American strength as leverage, keep Russia isolated and cautious. But all of this depends on Trump's choices. And history shows those are often impulsive, self-serving, and unpredictable. Donald Trump is not a peacemaker. He's not a war hawk. He's not pro-Russia or pro-Ukraine. He is, above all, pro-Trump. That makes him the most dangerous and unpredictable variable in the Ukraine war. If he returns to the White House, the war might not end, but it will change. The U.S. might stop helping. Europe might grow stronger. Ukraine might lose ground or gain new independence. And Putin may find that even friendly chaos is chaos all the same. The stakes are enormous. And the next chapter in the war might be written not in Kiev or Moscow, but in Washington.